Hi everybody, my name is Benjamin Krudwig and this is another crochet tutorial. Thank you all so much for watching this episode, and I know it's been a while since my last one. However, I'm trying to get back into the swing of things and get more content out there for you. The last video that I published was all about how you can make platonic solids, or also the dice that you would see for a D&D game, say, polyhedra. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can crochet with beads, and there are a couple of ways to do this. However, the one that I'm going to show you is involving yarn that you would normally see in a yarn store as opposed to like crochet thread. Crocheting with beads is commonly, you see it with crochet thread, very fine material, but today we're going to be using what I would call a light worsted to fingering weight yarn. Some people also call this a DK weight. It's just totally dependent on your wraps per inch. The yarn I'm using in this tutorial is Cricut by Anzula Luxury Fibers, hand-dyed in Fresno, California. I love the folks at Anzula. They are absolutely wonderful people, and you've probably heard me talk about them quite a bit in other videos or in my patterns. Cricut is a merino cashmere nylon base, and this one is one red shoe. That's the colorway, and it comes in about 250 yards per skein. So I absolutely love this color. It's extremely festive and a really beautiful primary red. So the other things that you're going to need are seed beads, and I'm not exactly sure what the millimeter size is on these, but these are kind of your traditional seed beads that you would find at your craft store or at your bead store. Going to need a crochet hook, of course. This is a size E for DK weight. I find that this gives me a nice solid stitch structure. And this one is a boy hook. I like boy hooks because of the tip. It's a slightly pointed, but it's more of a curved point. And then for this particular tutorial, I'm going to be using some fine metal wire and some pliers. So there are a couple of ways to add beads to your crochet project, and one of them involves, crocheting your project and sewing them on afterwards. Another one is taking a crochet hook that is small enough to fit through the hole of your bead. So that would require a very, very tiny hook, and there are some like lace hooks that work with that. However, that will not work with the size of yarn that we are using today. So my method is using basically a needle situation. However, most sewing needles, the eyes are too small for the yarn, and things like tapestry needles, the eyes are too big for the beads. So my way of going around this is taking a small length of wire and just clipping it, finding the center point of the wire, and using my small pliers, I am just going to fold it in half and I am going to twist the two together. And this doesn't have to be perfect at all. You just want it to be together so that when you are threading things, it doesn't want to splay apart. Cool, so this is going to create a really small eye here. And even this is probably not going to fit through the seed bead hole. So that's why I take another pair of pliers and hold. And you won't be able to see it quite well, but I just flatten that eye slightly. So you can see I flatten that eye just a little bit. That way it'll fit through the hole. Now, in order to get the yarn through this eye, I'm going to take another small, even smaller than the first piece of wire, and again I'm going to fold it in half, like so. And I'm just going to take the end of my yarn and place it just kind of in the crook of this piece here. Pinch the ends together slightly and pass both ends through the eye of my makeshift needle. Now this is much easier to do if I have this right up against my face so I can see what I'm doing, but for the purposes of this tutorial, things are far away. There we go. So I'm just going to pull that through the eye, like so. And now I have yarn on my makeshift needle. Now I already have a few beads strung on here, and that's because in order to use beads in a crochet project, the beads need to already be on your yarn. Otherwise, you won't be able to attach them using this method. So in order to do that, I just take a few of my beads and I'll pour them out in like a little dish, like so. And I will start threading them using my needle. For this particular string, I'm alternating gold and red. It's for a festive kind of color palette here. At the time of filming this, it's, December 2020. So the next one I need is red. And so again, you want to make sure that the end of your needle goes through the hole or the eye of the bead, and it just looks like my needle here has come undone a slight bit. If you need to use some pliers to just twist the end a little bit more, it's totally okay. There we go. So I thread the bead onto the needle, and I'll just slide it down onto the yarn. And I'll repeat that with a gold one. And I'll just pass my needle through the eye of that bead, like so, and then pass it down onto the yarn. Now the gold beads have a slightly smaller hole than the red beads, so the red ones have been very, very easy to thread, and the gold ones give a little bit of resistance. They fit just fine on the yarn itself, but where the needle and the doubled up yarn meet, it creates a little bit of a chunk, and so it's a little bit bulgy, and there can be some issues with that. So that's how you thread the beads onto the yarn, and there are certainly other ways to do it. If you have a needle that is the right size for the eye of your bead, that's fantastic, but if you don't have that, it's really easy to create your own using a piece of wire and some pliers. You could also use some other, I know there are some other tools out there for threading beads onto things. If you have that in your stash, go ahead and use it. All right, so as I mentioned before, you're going to need to string your beads onto your yarn for as many as you're going to need in the project. If it's a small project, that's really not a problem. If you're doing a really large project, you're not going to want to string all of your beads all at once. That's going to cause some tension issues for you. You're going to constantly be moving beads down the yarn. However, since I'm doing a relatively small project, I think I have enough beads on here, and if not, it's okay. I'll teach you how to add beads later. It involves some very simple techniques that you probably already know how to do, but I'll go over that in a little bit. So, to get started, I'm going to be crocheting in the round today. So first, I'm going to create my magic circle. and I do have a tutorial here on YouTube for this. So if you go to the crocheting a hat in the round video, I talked about using the magic loop tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that, and then do 6 single crochets in the loop. Alright, so I have the 6 single crochets in the loop. I'm going to pull my tail here to cinch the loop. And to finish my round, I'm going to single crochet in that first, or I'm going to actually slip stitch in that first stitch to close up my round. I misspoke. And I'm going to slip stitch again, or chain stitch, to start the beginning of the next round. And I'm going to hold my tail up against my work as I crochet, that way I lock in that tail. I'm going to single crochet 2 in each stitch. So I'm increasing in each stitch using a single crochet. And you might notice that the beads are inching their way up towards my finger. So periodically, you just have to massage them down the yarn because they will come along with the friction. So I'm not adding any beads right away because I want to create a solid foundation here. And again, on the second round, I am just increasing in all 6 stitches of the previous round, massaging beads down as I go. So once I have 12 stitches, I'm going to slip stitch in the first stitch of the round in order to finish my round. So I've already locked in the tail, so I don't really need to worry about this anymore. I can snip it. I usually wait to do all of my snipping until the very end of a project. That way, just in case I need to, frog back or whatever it is that I'm doing, I have extra bits. If I want to tie a pom-pom on the top, I can do that using the tail end. So I won't worry about that right now. So for this third round, I'm also going to not add any beads yet. I'm going to do that in the 4th round. So what I'm going to do is single crochet, and then in the next stitch, increase with single crochet. So it'll be single crochet 1, and then increase in the next stitch. So again, I'm doing a single crochet in 1 stitch, increase in the next stitch. I'm just going all the way around in those 12 stitches in the previous row, so I'll end with 18 stitches if I do everything right. So what I'm going to do here is close off the round just like I have the previous 2 by doing a slip stitch in that first stitch. I'm going to chain 1, and then what I'm going to do, well, again, I'm going to massage the beads down. Okay, so for this round, I'm going to single crochet in this first stitch. I'm going to put a bead on this next stitch. Now, there are a couple of ways of doing this. So first I'm going to grab a bead from the yarn, and I'm going to get it up close and personal to my work. Okay, so what we're going to do is a modified single crochet essentially. So we're going to go part by part on this. So the first thing that we're going to do, and this is kind of fiddly, the first thing we're going to do is insert our hook into the stitch and yarn over. We're going to take our bead and bring it close. So it's right up next to the work. We're going to yarn over and we're going to finish our single crochet. Okay, so that kind of buries the bead a little bit, but what we can do is we can actually like pop that bead to the surface, and what it does is it's right there embedded in the stitch. It's basically in the center of that stitch. Okay, so now I'm going to increase in the next stitch. So that's 1 and 2. And once you do that, and you give yourself some space, you can fiddle around with that bead placement. Okay, so now I'm going to single crochet 1, and then I'm going to get my next bead. Okay, and I don't want it right up against the work yet. I need to insert my hook into that stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then put the bead up against the hook, yarn over, and finish that for that single crochet. And then I'm going to do my increase in the next stitch, and I am going to manually finagle that bead into the center of that stitch. So you can see it really embeds itself in the work, which I like. Sometimes when you sew beads on, they're on the surface, so that's surface design, and they can snag, they can really cause some issues with the garment itself. So if this is like a scarf and you have beads just hanging off, they can snag and then pull and break off. With this method, the crocheting them on the string, for one, they're embedded in the fabric. So it would be very, very hard for these to get snagged unless you have like a textured bead, so to speak. All right, so I'm gonna do that a couple more times and you can see how it works. So that first stitch again, I'm just going to single crochet. And then this next stitch, I'm going to single crochet half, basically. I'm gonna do the insert my hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull it through. I'm gonna grab my next bead, which is a gold one this time. I'm gonna snug my bead right up against the work, right up against my hook, yarn over, pull through the loops to finish off that single crochet. Then I'm going to, in the next stitch, increase. All right, and yeah, oh no, where did the bead go? Just pop it through. And there it is. Single crochet, insert hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull it through, grab the next bead, get it up against the work and up against your hook, and yarn over and pull through. In the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. And then we're going to wiggle that bead right through the fabric. So I'm going to do the other two beads for this round, and then I'll return to you when we're on the next round and I can tell you basically how to handle crocheting into the stitches that have a bead on them. All right, so I finished the first round with the beads, and I just finished it like I always do by doing a slip stitch in the first stitch of the round. So I've already done my chain stitch to begin the next round, and what I want to be careful of is just knowing where my stitches are. So the bead here is going to be sitting right underneath that V of the single crochet. So it's just like you normally have any single crochet work, but there's just a little bit more bulk in the actual stitch itself. So I'm going to go ahead and single crochet in that first stitch. And then in the second stitch, I'm also going to single crochet, but I'm going to the right of this bead, essentially. So I'm going to single crochet, then to the left of the bead, single crochet, and then increase in that fourth stitch. So I'm not going to add any beads on this other round because I think that the density would be too much. There would be too many beads in one area. It's going to just look wrong, in my opinion. However, you are feel free to add as many beads as you want in order to get the look that you want. I think, you know, crochet and art like this, it's all subjective. So do whatever the heck you feel like it. So again, single crochet one to the right of the bead, single crochet to the left of the bead, and then I am going to increase like so. Single crochet, single crochet, and do be careful when you are single crocheting near these. These are, the ones that I have are glass seed beads. They're relatively strong, however, you know, anything can happen. So don't put too much pressure on the bead when you're single crocheting around it. Really just try to get into the stitch itself and just scoot past the bead. So what I mean by like that is you might even want to physically bring the bead over with your thumbnail and sneak your hook in, and then kind of do the same on the other side. It's a little bit harder, but you can do it. Okay? And then also regarding the bead durability, if you're crocheting on a hard surface, know that the more that this happens, so if you like to do this when you're moving your hands around, it's possible that you could shatter a bead. So in my case, that could actually be pretty bad because what could happen is my sequence is out of order at that point. Other things that could cause is tiny shards of glass embedding itself in the fiber or in your workspace, in your hands, and you really just don't want to do that. So be mindful about where, you know, what your seeds are, your seed beads are doing, what your hands are doing, what your crochet hook is doing, what surface you're crocheting on, etc. Just be careful. And if you do run out of beads, it's actually quite easy to replace. What you do is you snap your yarn, or you cut your yarn, however you like to do it, and then on the working yarn over here, you're going to thread more beads, just like we talked about at the beginning of the tutorial. And then you're going to start crocheting with that yarn just like you would with a new yarn in crochet. And I believe I have a tutorial on how to do that as well. If not, I'm sure there are some tutorials out there on how to do that. I'm not going to do that now because I have plenty of beads on my working yarn and I don't really feel like threading anything new. So we're just going to finish this round and then close out this tutorial. All right, so there you can see we have our first 6 beads placed on this lovely piece here. And again, this is going to become a hat, just something really festive and beautiful for the winter season. Also, again, I used Anzula Luxury Fibers Cricket DK weight yarn. It's hand dyed in Fresno, California, and the owner is a friend of mine who has been really supportive over the last few years of my yarn industry career, and you know, during these difficult times they could use all the help and support that they could get. So I highly recommend their yarns. They have a ton of different varieties for different needs and different desires, so please go check them out. And if you want to support the channel, the best way that you can do that is to both subscribe and hit the bell icon on the video so you get notified every time I release a new video. And you can also go to Patreon. So I have a Patreon set up for both Benjamin Krudwig Creative Arts and Benjamin Collin fashion design, and it's the same Patreon. I'm one person, but I figure while I'm no longer doing my fashion content on this channel, I do have a second channel for Benjamin Collin Fashion that I have not posted in a while, but it's okay. So that Patreon, if you want to support it, there's a few different tier levels and a few different perks that go along with being part of the channel. So things like behind the scenes content, early access to videos if you want them, and that kind of stuff. And even when you get to the higher levels, there's a custom sticker for patrons on Patreon. It's a quarterly sticker that I'll design and send off to you. So yeah, please check that out, and also give me a follow on all of the socials, and I will put all those links down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to doing more of these videos in the future. Please let me know in the comments below what kind of tutorials you would like to see. I am doing some knitting, so you'll be seeing some of that content coming up soon as well. So I may do a beginning knitting series and then move into more difficult things, just like I did with crochet when I started 10 years ago. So yeah, keep an eye out for that content, and if you really, really like this stuff, please share it with your friends and families and your yarn folk. So I will see you all in the next video. Bye.